Hello and welcome to The Wire Explains, which is our daily show where we discuss 3 recent events. I'm Jahnavi Sen from The Wire and this is our founding editor Siddharth Vaidyanathan. So thank you for joining us. What we'll be discussing today first is the Supreme Court order on fake encounter killings in Manipur and AFSPA. The second is what's happening in Bihar with the case that's been filed against Tejashwi Yadav and his family and what effect that's happening on the alliance. And the third is something that we discussed yesterday already, but that's escalated today. An FIR has been filed against the comedy group AIB for a tweet in which there was a meme of Narendra Modi.
Yeah.
So let's start with Manipur. The Supreme Court has said that a CBI special investigation team has to look into 98 cases of fake encounter deaths in Manipur. These deaths are over the last decade. It's actually on a writ petition where the number of deaths that the group detailed to the court was 1,528, and the court has picked 98 out of those, in which no FIR was ever filed against anyone in uniform. And so, what do you think this this means for the investigation?
No, I think this is a landmark moment in the fight for justice in all cases involving the police and armed forces, and notwithstanding or regardless of the legislative cover or protection that people in uniform tend to have, either via the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, if you're the Army or Assam Rifles, or the IPC, which does not allow somebody to be prosecuted without prior sanction from the government. Right. So I think this has been a long, lonely, difficult battle. Our colleague Anu Bhuyan went and did this marvelous story earlier this year from Imphal, where she actually described what 1528 dead people look like. It was a cabinet with each a file for each person, and the trail goes cold simply because the local police and the local state authorities either had no interest in investigating these cases, or came up against the brick wall of AFSPA and other similar.
And that's something the court has said too, that the reason the CBI needs to step in is because what the state authorities have done is that any cases that have been filed are actually against the deceased families and not against anyone else.
Yeah, I mean the important point of law that the court has underlined is that in any case where death results, any use of force by people in uniform where death results, you have to have an FIR. There has to be a proper post-mortem. Courts have ruled in the past also about how post-mortems are to be conducted. And this law is never applied. And we've seen, even in high-profile cases, one of the first cases that I reported from Manipur many years ago was of Manorama, who was a woman who was abducted, arrested, however you want to put it, by the Assam Rifles from her home, taken to a field, and shot dead. Some reports had it that she was molested by the soldiers. And a case was registered. There was an inquiry commission, the Upendra Commission, which took many years to finally pronounce that her death was wrongful death. But again, no prosecution. So I think it's important that the court has said categorically that the impunity that law gives people in uniform cannot be kind of an excuse for them to engage in the excessive use of force. So it said repeatedly, the bench today of Lokur and Lalit ruled that excessive force, excessive retaliatory force is not permissible, whether under AFSPA or under any other criminal statute. And they have essentially asked the CBI to probe these cases, right? This is 58, how many cases? 98 cases. I think the story will become interesting when the SIT set up by the CBI uncovers details, let's say in case number X, involving an army person, right? Now, we have examples already from Jammu and Kashmir, where the CBI investigated the custodial killing of 5 innocent civilians. This was the famous Patribal case from 2000, when the army filed an FIR claiming to have killed 5 terrorists in an encounter. And it then emerged that those 5 terrorists were actually not terrorists at all, but they were villagers who had gone missing from their homes in and around Anantnag district. And eyewitnesses had each of these people being abducted and bundled into a police or an army jeep and then vanishing. And then, of course, when DNA tests were conducted, it turned out that these 5 individuals whom the army had described as terrorists were actually these innocent civilians.
Yeah.
So the CBI was given charge of the case. They investigated and they filed murder charges against the officers involved. And for 10 years, the army contested the right of the CBI to prosecute its soldiers, saying that under AFSPA you don't have that right. And the matter went to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court, despite the fact that at each stage in the previous 10 years, the army had been given the choice by a lower court when it said the CBI has no right to prosecute. The lower court said, well, you please prosecute. And the army said, no, we're not going to. Despite the army taking that view for 10 years, the Supreme Court gave the army a final chance and said, look, either you prosecute or the CBI is going to prosecute. So obviously the army chose to prosecute itself, and within a few months it held a court of inquiry and said no case is found. So you had the anomaly of an investigation into a fake encounter of a most heinous kind by the CBI, which concludes that murder was committed. Case goes to the army for prosecution, and the army says no case, right? So I only hope that in any case involving officers or soldiers protected by AFSPA, if the CBI uncovers evidence that warrants the criminal prosecution, the Supreme Court should think once, twice, 100 times before it entrusts the army with prosecuting those cases. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, the court has given the SIT until January next year to submit its report, so that's going to be something to watch out for. But meanwhile, let's move on to our second topic, which is what's happening in Bihar. So reports have said that Nitish Kumar has given Tejashwi Yadav till tomorrow to come clean and resign from the Deputy Chief Minister's post. And the RJD has held all along that they have more seats in the assembly, and so the decision should rest with Lalu. It depends on what he wants to do. But the JDU spokesperson Neeraj Kumar has said recently that the JDU is not impressed with what Tejashwi Yadav has said so far, and that he hasn't really given a proper explanation. So do you really see this affecting the alliance in a big way?
You see, even if the alliance survives the current standoff, right, whether tomorrow's deadline is sacrosanct or not, there's even some reports that Tejashwi might actually quit. Because in some ways it would be clever political strategy on their part to say, fine, this case has been filed, we think it's a trumped-up case, but we will respect what the CBI has done, and we're going to essentially, until we clear our name, we're going to step down. There's a lot of political merit in Tejashwi Yadav doing that, and the RJD getting him to do that, and maybe having somebody else. We ran a piece by Apurvanand. It was in the form of an open letter to Tejashwi Yadav, where he makes a clever case for how Tejashwi Yadav, who in some ways is quite different from his father and his other brother who's in the government, and at least aspires to that kind of image which Akhilesh Yadav now has nurtured for himself in Uttar Pradesh. So if indeed he wants to stand for new politics, then Apurvanand said, look, just move, just step down, let somebody else, a more seasoned leader, be the deputy CM, and you fight your battle politically. If indeed sane counsel prevails and Lalu agrees and Tejashwi agrees, then the immediate crisis is over. However, the difficulty is going to arise because the BJP has spotted an opportunity here. You've had relentless statements by Sushil Modi, who keeps advertising how much we love Nitish and how much Nitish loved us, all of which is aimed at deepening the sense of divide between RJD and Nitish. There's always been residual suspicion in the quote-unquote secular camp vis-a-vis Nitish, because he was, after all, a steadfast ally of the BJP for many years, even through the 2002 Gujarat massacres, and of course quit much later. Now, we interviewed K.C. Tyagi, who was categorical that the issues which led Nitish to break with the BJP, which is his implacable opposition to a Ram temple at Ayodhya, his opposition to any dilution of Article 370, and any attempt to push uniform civil code. These issues remain, and until, as long as the BJP is committed to those three issues, there is no question of Nitish going back to the BJP. And I think there's every reason to believe Tyagi when he says that. But the managing this coalition between Lalu and Nitish.
I've also seen Nitish's support for Kovind as the NDA's presidential candidate as a sign that maybe he's thinking of going back in that direction.
Well, but his logic was that we tried to have a non-Congress candidate that we could all agree on. Congress dithered, and I was left with no option but to have So I think there's a plausible, I mean, Nitish's story is plausible. I wouldn't hold that out as evidence that Nitish is on the verge of breaking. And it's a very convenient narrative for BJP to put out that aise hone wala hai. But I think that the imbalance within the Gathbandhan, Mahagathbandhan, where the face and image, public sort of persona of the Bihar government is of Nitish. And in many ways, what makes the Mahagathbandhan appealing at the national level is that you have somebody with this sort of cuddly, clean, acceptable image that Nitish does have. Right? There was time when the big media, which today chases after Modi, was hailing Nitish as the most efficient chief minister and the best guy, etc. So Nitish has a pan-India appeal, which I'm sure Lalu also recognizes will hold the will stand the coalition in good stead in 2019. But the fact is that Nitish has got the numbers, as you say, in the assembly, and blood is thicker than water, unfortunately, with these in these political parties. So, somewhere down the line, Lalu, who has committed the folly of promoting his family over other cadre, he needs to move away from this. And were he to do that, I think, I'm not even getting into the merits of the case. I mean, Tejashwi says he was only 14 when the crime he is accused of committing. I don't know. I haven't gone into the case in any merit, but assuming he has a strong case, I don't think he weakens himself politically by following Apurvanand's advice. So I think that there's probably a lot more we're going to see. I'd be surprised if any rupture within the coalition happens soon, but there is obviously plenty of scope for tension.
And we are looking for more details on what exactly the BJP is alleging and the CBI's case. We have an explainer up today by Ajoy Ashirwad, so I would recommend you look at that. And meanwhile, we can now move on to the AIB and the FIR that the Mumbai Police Cyber Cell has filed against them for defamation, but also under the IT Act, for which the punishment can be up to 3 years in prison and 5 lakh fine. So, I mean, do you think we need a brief recap of
I think you should quickly.
So what happened was that they put up a meme which had someone who looked a lot like Modi and also an image of Modi with a Snapchat filter of a dog. And then there was a huge outrage from BJP supporters about how this was against national sentiment, and they pulled it down, which also led to more outrage on whether or not they were cowing to authoritarianism, and also from the Congress, who said that there was no reason for them to take it down. But what also happened on the same day, which I don't think no one really took note of at the time, was someone tweeted at the police saying that you should take note of this, and the police tweeted back saying.
So they tweeted back yesterday, right? Okay.
I think day before night actually. Saying we'll forward this to our cyber cell. Thank you for pointing it out. And now today an FIR has been registered, and I mean it seems, 5 lakh and 3 years in prison for a meme.
No, it's absurd, and I think we can pat ourselves on the back for having taken this up for discussion yesterday. And I want to acknowledge our social media editor Karnika Kohli, whose suggestion it was. Thank you. But the fact is that, as we pointed out yesterday, this really speaks to the amazing level of intolerance of any kind of sarcasm, comedy, criticism. For the police of India's largest city to consider wasting any time on completely frivolous charge that they've laid against All India Bakchod, right? Now the two sections that they've filed under criminal defamation now and under the section 67 of the IT Act. Yesterday we noted how section 66 of the IT Act was read down by the Supreme Court, right, and no longer exists, but 67 has become the new 66, right? So this is the provision under which the electronic transmission of so-called obscene material is criminalized. Now there is ample case law in India that lays down that obscenity or obscene material has to be material that is lascivious in nature or tends to deprave. Now even these are vague words, but to draw dog features on the face of anybody, even somebody as beloved and respected as our dear Prime Minister, it's really stretching it to say that this is lascivious or calculated to deprave. And I think that this case will eventually be thrown out, but I do strongly feel that the police officers who authorized and the tweet of the Bombay police says we took legal advice and so on. So I think we need to make a list of all of those guys who signed on the dotted line to say that there is a case to be prosecuted here. And I think the full force of IPC, which criminalizes the filing of false malicious cases, has to be thrown against these guys in the police department, because it is ridiculous to criminalize a meme. If you do that, then I think every cartoonist in this country who draws a caricature of Modi or Advani or any political leader runs the risk of being prosecuted. And for them to invoke criminal defamation. Now, Section 500 of the IPC, which deals with criminal defamation, there is a procedure involved. If you have been criminally defamed, I cannot file a case on your behalf. You have to be the complainant. If you are a public authority, right, so we can't expect the Chief Minister or the Prime Minister to go and file a complaint himself or herself, then the Attorney General, there is a legal department of the government that does it on their behalf. I know this because when I was editor of The Hindu, I had 2 criminal defamation cases filed against me by the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, by the AG of Tamil Nadu acting on her behalf. Right, so there is a procedure. The cops simply can't just say, we are filing a criminal defamation case on behalf of Narendra Modi. But they have, and I again repeat that the IPC, which says false, malicious prosecutions are not allowed, there's a, I would like to see cases registered against these guys, because if this kind of, harassment of genuine, you can't even call it dissent, right? It's just comedy, right? And
there was no point.
I mean, like it was neither I mean, people are making these kinds of images all the time, right? So if you're going to criminalize a meme, God help the police force, God help this country, and God help the future of freedom of expression. I think that this is really a line that the Bombay police ought not to have crossed. We'd assumed that these bad old days were over when Section 66 was gotten rid of. But I think maybe it's now time for the Supreme Court to look at Section 67.
Okay, I think that's all we have for today. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll come again next week.